This thing on?
It is. That is such an abrupt ending to the music.
I'm sorry.
Look,
I know, but there's just...
It didn't happen this time.
It wasn't even working earlier, so be thankful. I mean, I don't even know if they can hear us. So
nobody said that we're experts in this. We just have a whole studio, run multiple around the world sessions, trainings.
Yeah, and I didn't go to school.
Have thousands of people join us for,
I didn't go to school for this, so, sometimes.
That's what I always complain. It's like, hey, why doesn't the lighting look great? Well, I didn't go to school for this. Why doesn't, my car work?
Gotta make all my adjustments.
That's what
I gotta make all my adjustments.
Welcome, everyone, to our now today live stream of the Wicked Opportunities podcast. Hopefully those who are listening get to listen to us on the podcast on a regular basis, but of course once a month we go live in a live stream on YouTube. So
if you're
podcast,
if you're watching live, go ahead and drop us a hello in the chat. We run our live stream a lot like a Zoom. It's a very very boomer live stream.
Boomer live stream?
A little bit.
There's no boomers in the room.
There's not.
Boomers are welcome, though.
Boomers are welcome, but I'm just, what I'm saying is, you know what I'm saying? Is like, we're trying to be hip, we're trying to be cool, and go live.
I was never cool.
I beg to differ, but yet it's extremely orchestrated. Like, it's like, and it, like, once we loosen up, how long has it been since we did one of these? It feels like 6 months.
It's been a little while.
But it hasn't been that long. Yeah. Did we skip one?
We're not loose. I feel pretty loose. So.
Maybe because I was the one trying to get the test thing to work, and it wasn't.
Probably true, yeah.
And it wasn't working.
We also do on our live stream.
Hello, Cecilia from DC.
Like to just be real and sort of shoot the. See, you thought I was going to say a curse word there, but I'm not. Oh, Cecilia, so nice to see you. Love all the stuff that you always post on LinkedIn, and it's great to have you in here today, too. And looks like a few others are joining us as well, so that's great. Today, we want to talk about...
From Ghana.
Oh, nice. Nice to see you. It's wonderful to have you. Today, we really wanted to talk about one of the things I was posted on LinkedIn just a few minutes ago. Of course, we've been talking about the inner development goals.
We have been.
And they're very important because we talk about all of this external stuff all the time, and I'm not saying that's not important. Of course it is, obviously. But one of the things that the inner development goals were created for was to suggest that we're not really making a lot of headway on sustainable development goals or any action that we really want to take because we're not in our hearts and our heads and our hands aligning with those things. So it's really easy to say, look, we have all these goals we want to meet, and then have all these systems whereby people make their money, do the things every day, get their water, get their electricity, vote, and those systems just run on a daily basis. And so which one are you going to choose? You're going to choose to just sort of run with the systems. And so we haven't had our hearts and our heads aren't aligning with those goals. So we needed inner development change. One of the things I posted on LinkedIn just a little bit ago to invite people to come to today's live stream was how come in the futures field and in the foresight field, we work so much on external events and we have little to no focus on internal futuring, how we experience the future individually and collectively internally. And there's almost no work on that whatsoever. There's nobody focusing on that. And so we obviously work with clients all the time and do strategy work and innovation work and client work and organizational development work and all kinds of different clients. But we also we do our best, and increasingly more so, we're focusing on those inner experience of futuring. What does it mean to build up the inner futurist, the inner future thinker?
You're jumping right in. Normally there's like witty banner. We might give away secrets.
There's still witty banner.
We've been giving away secrets.
I also said that it's a possibility we might make a big announcement here today.
Oh my gosh, you said that on LinkedIn?
That we shouldn't be making.
But why would you put that on LinkedIn? Because now Angela and the team are going to see it. They can't mute us.
They can't stop us anyway.
They really can't.
And that you won't hear anywhere else just yet. So this is it. And after this, unless somebody's listening to the recording.
I was going to say the recording that lives on, but maybe we'll edit this out. We'll edit this out, and then these friends will be the first
They'll be the
to hear.
only ones to know.
Yeah.
That there might be some important announcement coming.
Yeah, no, we can talk announcements. I think we front load those before we get kicked off. But yeah, obviously we're going to continue our journey in the inner development goals. We've been a little lax on the
boomer here, Kate. This is awesome.
Yeah, we've been a little lax on the recording of our regular podcasts. Life has gotten in the way. We had a hurricane this week. That's not the reason why, but we can list that as a reason. Luckily, thankfully, we were able. Our local team. We did okay in this one, but other folks within the state. How did your family do in Savannah?
As far as I know, they're good. It's interesting because obviously we live in Florida. The hurricane hit Florida. We had one of the nicer days here in Orlando.
In Central Florida, but there were parts of Florida that were hit.
We've had one of the nicer days here, specifically here where we're sitting, than we've had in months because it wasn't hot. It was a nice blowy breeze.
Yeah.
But other people were devastated.
Yeah.
And it went straight up through Georgia and hit Savannah directly as a Category 1. By the time when it landed here, it was like almost a 4. It was a strong Category 3.
Yeah.
And I think a limb fell on my mom's house. A big limb fell on their house. So we'll have to. But she said I got electricity back last night in the middle of the night. So and I was worried about them because it's hot.
No, electricity's no joke, man. You need to have
electricity. And they're no spring chickens, and trying to sleep through the heat is rough. So, but air conditioner came back on around 2:00 in the morning, so they're good. They're good.
Yeah. Let's not get on the topic of increasing storms and all that good stuff because that'll be. But yeah, but I'm
first time in recorded history, as far as they know, that a hurricane of that magnitude hit there they don't usually come up through the Gulf and hit right in the elbow.
Yeah.
Sort of the arm.
Yeah. But I am excited to talk today about the acting facet. I think that, look, at the end of the day, we all want to create change. We all want to put our foresight efforts into action. And we're big proponents of the fact that, throughout the foresight process, you are creating change and action. Right. But I love that the IDGs like hone in on this acting facet. And we'll talk about, the different traits that the inner development goals lay out in this particular one. But maybe we tease like one of the announcements, and then we could do another announcement at the end.
We can.
Okay.
So you go ahead and do the teases. I don't know which one teases first. I don't think I know.
I feel like the first one we should tease is the one that's roughly a year from now.
Yeah. Okay. That's the one I was thinking about teasing.
Yeah. So, again, not to belabor the point, but if you...
The tease is directly related to what I was saying already. You thought I was just jumping right in, but I was trying to sort of set up.
I see. I apologize.
No need.
I see the inner and the unlocking of the inner.
Exactly.
Yeah. Those of you that have followed along know that we have been known in the past one time before to host a pretty amazing in-person experience that even brought in the spiritual element of foresight. And while we're not going to give away details, we will say that we are excited that in 2024 that experience is coming back better than ever. And we are selfishly excited to go and have this experience. And we hope that some of you join us. So be on the lookout. The official announcement will be out in a couple weeks. I will just note that this is a very, we're hoping to offer this experience more often.
Yes.
But the nature of the experience itself is very intimate. And as a result, it's very limited in terms of how many we can host at each experience.
Exactly.
So it's just the nature of it. It's not trying to be exclusive. It's not trying to gatekeep. It's literally the nature of the experience. And I'm going to just really stress nature here. The nature of the experience is one.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. That's funny that we were on the same little vibe. So previously we've hosted similar experiences on the west coast of Florida.
I mean, lest you think that it's not, transformations.
It's transformations.
And we had one almost a year ago. It was in September in the mountains of Northern California.
Yes.
We had 22 people there, I think.
Something like that.
And then, of course, all the stuff happened. So we didn't do one in 23. We sort of didn't.
No, it was on purpose.
23 anyway.
Yeah, no, we knew we were going to sort of take a year off.
But as you said, though, we hope that, even though this one will appear closer to the end of 24, we hope to do multiple of them a year eventually if there's the desire for it. Even if there's not, though, we'll be doing it at least once a year.
We're excited to give everyone a heads up on this one far in advance. We have one experience already under our belt from last year. So we're able to get this one up and running. It is going to be a different location. Obviously, it's going to be a different experience because of that, because it'll be a different group of people. We attracted a global audience. We had people flying from Australia last year.
Yes.
So that's amazing. We hope
Panama.
we hope to gather a similar global audience, and that's why we wanted to give people a year and notice in advance to make their plans. We have opportunities to share, lodging if that's, something that's of interest. We will have, different ways to make it accessible to as many people as possible. And we're really excited. So that's going to come, and then we have more announcements, but we'll save them for the end. Let's talk IDGs, and then unless there's something else you wanted to say.
Well, no, I just want to make a segue into that.
Do it.
You were saying an event like this is very different. And this is a segue into the IDGs.
Yeah.
Because by now, people that are friends of TFSX know that not only do we offer advisory services and consultation, but we're very focused around transformation. We're very focused on what it means to experience the future. People know I post all the time in different places. I love this quote from Maria Rilke, the German poet, who said, "The future enters into us in order to work itself in us." That's what the Transformations event is all about. And that's why you said nature, because we get out in nature, and it's I was telling Ashley the other day, our Ashley Bowers.
I'm familiar with her.
Yeah. That who, as a sustainability expert, but also as a yoga practitioner, a professional, that we love to describe foresight as a biological, psychological, and sacred dynamic for humanity. And so when you usually go to a futures conference, it's going to be about how do you use the futures wheels, and how do you use CLA, and all those things are important. We do that at Foundations too, so it's so important.
We have amazing, and that's part of the announcement that we'll share at the end, is what we're doing exciting around our Foundations program. So so if you're looking more for that type of experience and learning alongside. I mean, they're all, as you said, linked.
They're all linked.
We can't really silo them. I mean, many people go to our foundations, especially when we're able to do them in person. Hint, hint. And they describe that as a spiritual experience.
Oh, many times.
And we're doing futures wheels and tools. So, but you were saying, and I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, it's because they're totally linked.
Yeah.
But the point that I was going to make is when you come to a Transformations event, we're not there to do futures wheels and learn tools and methodologies. We're there to talk about developing the individual, and even more importantly, the collective, collaborative, and cooperative biological, psychological, and sacred trait of futuring, which is inherent throughout the cosmos. Yeah. If you're like, I didn't know that it even was. Is it? Is that true? Come to the Transformations event. I promise you, it's so powerful. And we believe that to be really the starting place, really. I mean, obviously, most people are going to dip their foot in the futures by saying, like, ooh, I could use this in my organization. It's a tool instead. Totally.
I mean, absolutely.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But also, we have been for years, but increasingly more and more and more, we're leaning into how important it is to get people to understand that this isn't just a tool and a methodology and a mechanism, but it's a way of thinking, acting, being. It's a biological, a psychological, and a sacred trait. And I get so jazzed when we talk about that. So we talk about natural foresight, holoptic foresight, transformational foresight at these transformation events. We talk about generational connectivity, generations past, present, and future. And there's some crying that happens. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
so powerful.
I think more and more, we're starting to realize as people that that our traditional methods aren't, I shouldn't say traditional, our modern methods in many ways aren't really successful, aren't really bringing everyone along, aren't creating the equity, aren't creating the harmony with our planet that we know we need to have, not only for our current state, but for our future generations. So, but I want to bring it back to acting and enabling change because I know we are, because ultimately the key to creating change right now, August 31st, 2023, is by individuals understanding that they have this innate ability. This isn't something that we download a template and then all of a sudden we have this magical. Those templates can support us, can assist us, and are very, very important. And again, we have all those things. But what I love about the inner development goals is it really is the gateway for us to be able to articulate to ourselves and to each other that friends, we naturally have the ability to think this way.
That's right.
And it's an imperative that we go back to cultivating and curating that ability. And I think the IDGs give us those 23 traits to just boil it down to like, who do I need to be? What do I need to embody? And then an experience like transformations or a framing like holoptic, which we talk about in transformations, I think takes these inner development, these individual traits, and puts them on like steroids, because we understand the impact of working in a collective around these ideas and these traits. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Joseph. We're so glad that you agree with that, and so happy that you're joining from Denmark today. And can't wait to host a Transformations retreat in Europe.
I feel
we've hinted at that a little bit. So
we'll do it. We'll do it. I think that I don't know. We get really excited. I think that our practice, this organization, the parent company we call KEDGE, what we now sort of called, sort of named TFSX, has been around for 14 years. We just celebrated our birthday.
Happy birthday, TFSX.
And I feel like we have grown and matured in our practice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think we've always felt a lot of these ideas were true, but it takes courage.
It takes courage. Great segue.
Thanks. Yeah. I thought you would like that.
Because obviously there are 5 big areas. I don't think they call them big areas. They
domains.
Domains. Thank you. Within the IDGs, the Inner Development Goals. And again, just to ground, the reason we've been on this 23andMe series.
Get it? Because of the DNA and the thing.
And
she went in jail, but really the pun is still really cute, isn't it? Because it's 2023.
Yes.
And it's 23 traits
and 23
me.
Traits
and it's internal and the DNA. Anyway, I guess.
So in the Inner Development Goals, there's 23 traits. We're on the last domain, which has the last 4 traits. And the reason that Yvette mentioned courage is because the first trait within the acting domain is courage. There's also creativity, optimism, and that's one that I think confuses people a lot, but we're going to talk about it briefly here today, and then perseverance. But I just want to ground again to say that the reason we've been on this is because we know, but we also believe that these 23 traits inside the Inner Development Goals, you can look at them by just going to innerdevelopmentgoals.org, are basically perfectly aligned with the same traits that we believe are needed to be a good futures thinker. And you have these. I want to go back to that for just a second, Yvette, because we were working with a client this week that's working on the future.
A really amazing client.
Future of pluralism and democracy, specifically in the United States, but they're wide open to connecting with others around the world, and as a matter of fact, they commissioned a report last year that said, look, what's going on in democracy in other countries that we're not adopting in the United States that is progressive and new ways, not progressive in terms of the politics, progressive right. in terms of learning new things that we can
making
do,
progress,
updating. And they were reiterating something that we often say, and that is that there's large swaths of people around the world who are just fighting to make it through today. And this idea of sitting around and thinking about the future is totally a privilege, totally a mega privilege. Because there's a lot of people who are like, future, I'm just trying to think about how did we get through yesterday.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. Every person alive has the inherent ability to think about and should be allowed to and empowered to think about the future.
Yeah.
And it's such a robbery, a binding that our systems today steal from so many people. The agency, the voice, the ability to influence the future, because that's what they're supposed to be doing. We have to be on this mission to unlock the ability from within everybody to think about the future. And that means that we need to change systems that are binding us from thinking about the future. The most important voices in the world that need to add to the future are the ones who are not.
Yeah.
And the voices that have controlled the future from the get-go are the ones who have the most input. That needs to stop. So that's the heart of the IDGs and transformation and what we're talking about.
And I think, too, I mean, this is sort of splitting hairs a little bit, but it struck me when you were, and we say this all the time, that it's a privilege to be able to have this space and have these conversations. But we also say that, the way that we think about the future directly impacts our decisions. And for these people that don't have agency or are marginalized, so they can't actively and intentionally think about the future, quote unquote, they do have a thought about the future. It's just unconscious, and for them, it's that they have no future. And so the actions you take when you believe that there is no future for you,
that's right,
is just, it's sad, and it's why I believe we're in a lot of the situation that we're in.
That's
it's
right.
like, and so it's a bit of a more nuanced, and I know what you were getting at, and you're absolutely right, but it just struck me as like, they're unconsciously thinking they have no future.
That's right.
And so, this is why we have a lot of the issues that we're facing. And so we talk about courage all the time. One of the reasons why we got so excited about the 23andMe podcast series and live stream series is because essentially what the Inner Development Goals Initiative has provided us is a internal roadmap to becoming a natural foresight practitioner. And I say natural foresight very, very intentionally here.
Yes.
Because not every foresight is practiced in the same way. Even the term of strategic foresight, which we use because it's a common term, doesn't really get at the way that we believe philosophically foresight should be practiced, and really just is practiced. It's a natural thing. And so we talk all the time about the need to be courageous. And in part, that's because our existing systems are built to work against a futurist and foresight perspective. So to go against existing systems and the status quo, it takes a lot of courage.
It takes a lot of courage. We say that all the time. If you want to be in foresight, if you want to be a futures thinker, if you want to help others break through to be the futures thinkers that the cosmos means for them to be, we have to ramp up our courage.
Yeah.
We have to encourage one another to have courage.
It's so hard. I mean, I can just speak personally. I'm just going to be
We have to empower well, Cecilia all the time encourages us online.
Yeah.
And we have to empower her, and she's doing amazing work. She has been for years. And she says, I agree 100%. We all need voice.
Yeah.
We need all the voices and all creativity to solve these multiple crises.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just candidly, I mean, I can give examples of where, my courage has been tested in this work.
Oh, yes.
I mean, just, from starting out, attempting to do this within the Disney corporate, confines, lots of learnings there. And sometimes it's good to be young and just be blindly courageous too.
So
I'm just going to put that out there.
That's so true.
But no, the example I was thinking of was actually more recent. Not that recent, but more recent. And it was when I remember we were in this room. I'm pretty sure we were in this room. I think we were in this studio already. Maybe you'll remember. We were definitely recording a podcast. And it was the podcast, I think it was part of the first collection of the 7 shifts, when we talked about love.
Yes.
And it was one of the first times that publicly we talked about that.
It is. And since then, many times, and something that we'll definitely be covering at Transformation.
Yeah,
again,
and so I remember distinctly, and it was before we recorded, video recorded the podcast, so it was just audio, so you probably wouldn't have caught it if you were listening, unless you were a real stalker and you sort of know our mannerisms. But I remember thinking, having a thought I think we're going too far with this one. I think you're taking us too far is really what I meant to say.
Buckle up, we haven't gone far enough yet.
Yeah, and so I share that because I think that, part of our calling in this work is to not hold ourselves up on some pedestal, but rather to, because the future is already intimidating enough. Like, we don't need any more intimidation, friends. Right. We don't want to be a sage on the stage. I mean, we do that work, but even when we do it, it's from a place of being humble and
pulling people in.
Exactly. Being on their level. This is why we use humor. I mean, it's in our personalities, but it's also because of trying to welcome people in, and it's self-deprecating humor we often use, and we joke around. People sometimes they don't get it. It's not like we're like, okay, let me write a joke in here. It is natural, but part of the reason why it's natural is because we genuinely as people want to bring people in, especially to foresight. Anyway, so courage is a big thing. Creativity, I think, is an interesting call out here.
It is.
Because,
by the way, I just want to say, I don't know if I said hello to Precious, but she says Cecilia is amazing. She's empowering people like myself. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
I saw that, Cecilia had.
There's a lot of love going on in the chat, which we love to see. We love to see.
Welcome. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. So creativity, I really, actually, I don't want to pick favorites because I think every domain has its interesting aspects, but I love where they went with the acting domain here.
I love it too.
Because creativity, I think, like love, gets the short end of the stick in our current systems.
Yes.
And it's viewed as fluffy. We've talked a lot about that this week, about woo-woo and what's not woo-woo. And look, the future is not going to look like today. And we know that if you have a piece of data on something, by definition, it's the past. And so if we are going to walk into a future that we all agree should be different because we want to, fix problems that we see today, it's going to take us creating new ideas. It's going to take then creativity to do that. I mean, it's obvious, right?
It is. You know what really, I was telling you earlier, struck me about these two things is, and I wrote an article recently, The Future Thinker's Dilemma. You can find it on Medium.
You are a prolific writer.
I've written a lot this year.
Recently, you have become, I will say.
I wish I was actually a more prolific writer.
I think your writings are amazing, and I want you to talk about the article that you're about to talk about.
But
absolutely. But I also want to highlight another piece that we just released today in ebook format.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Medium article in just a second.
Sure.
The ebook that we just released for free is based off of another Medium article that you wrote around the concept of alive, and we won't dive into it. But it's an acronym, and who doesn't love another foresight acronym? Yeah. We know you do. So I think Angela will drop in the chat the link to the blog post where you can get access to that ebook, but continue down the path of the Medium article you were referring to.
Well, now you made me want to talk about the Alive article because I love it so much.
I know.
But I think we talked about that maybe on our next.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole podcast, the whole live stream. So here's the deal. Yeah. If you're listening to this either live or on the recording, here's your homework. Okay? I don't remember.
I love it. They got
is it the next live stream? Yes. You know why? Because it is October 31st. October 31st. I know. It is Halloween.
I've got my decorations over there because behind me,
it will be fully
themed.
In
September, it's going to completely change.
Okay, mark your calendars. Mark your calendars. October 31st. Live stream. We're going to talk about the future being alive. Read the ebook. Read that short ebook before October 31st. Be prepared with your notes to discuss the topic. All right. So now don't talk about alive. Talk about what you were going to talk about.
Don't do it, Frank. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
I'm not going to do it.
Don't do it.
I'm not going to do it. I did it. So on Medium, there's another article, different article, that I released recently called The Future Thinker's Dilemma. And it was interesting because, I love when people give feedback and not just like, oh, I loved your article, Frank, but also, it's like, hey, look, in the spirit of, I'm not just trying to be a jerk here, but in the spirit of actually questioning, I have some opinions about this article. I may not agree with it. That's perfectly fine.
Look, discussion and exchange and engagement is the way we all learn. We all learn. So we encourage that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is an easy article to do that with, because it says, look, if foresight and futures isn't challenging our present systems, then is it really foresight and futures? And I've gotten a lot of people saying, like, love the article. And I've gotten a few people saying, like, liked the article. However, I don't agree, because I think there are instances where we need to, like, be propping up our present systems so that they don't just collapse and there's a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
And then there's other times when we need to, but my question is like, if this is why you've often heard me say, and more recently, I don't like the phrase, think exponentially, act incrementally. Because in the article, I even talk about the 3 or the 4, all depending on the day, evil E's, E, like the letter E. And one of them is exponential. It's also extractive. Now I'm not going to remember, but it's like...
I can start thinking of E words like endocrinology.
Exploitative, not endocrinology. Extrapolative.
Nice, yes.
There they are.
Yes.
And but one of them is exponential. And exponential basically describes, hey, look, what we got now, we need to 10x it,
Yeah, really. Let's think about that for just a second.
Yeah.
How many things that we have today do we really want it to 10x?
Yeah.
Let's all think about it. Yeah. It makes me think of this is a total aside, and I know that you're talking about much more important stuff than that. But did you see the people trying to drive their Tesla through floodwaters?
Yeah.
Friends.
Yes.
They catch fire. Like full on fire, because electricity and water don't mix. So we don't need 10x of that.
We don't
anyway.
Need 10x. Just to because I love pointing out other amazing people like Cecilia. If you aren't following her on LinkedIn, she's always posting great stuff. My good friend Christopher Rice, another great futurist, that we have another talk coming up probably before the year's over. We haven't scheduled it, but it's coming. You
and Christopher always have great conversations. I know. And Frank has like a handful of folks that he he likes to text with. It's fine. I'm not jealous. But yeah, I mean, you've said so many great things about Christopher Rice that when I realized that he and I weren't connected on LinkedIn, I was like a little bit intimidated, but I'm like, I'm going to see if he maybe will be my friend too. I'm not,
and lo and behold,
I'm not as cool as you are. But what I love about Christopher Rice is that he's also really funny. He's funny.
You're a funny guy, Christopher.
So he speaks my sarcasm, love language. And
and but his posts on LinkedIn are very challenging. This is the point I want to make actually here. And so, Christopher will say, like, I'm not excited about AI or the metaverse. I'm excited about smart concrete in cities that soaks up rainwater. And, I'm excited about smart infrastructure rewilding our cities. Why is everybody on here so excited about something that was written about in Snow Crash that was actually a warning, and then technologists read these books and they literally try to make the thing that was a warning in the sci-fi book, don't ever make this thing. Why? What? Help us. Please help us. So this is why we don't need to think exponentially and act incrementally. We need to think transformationally and act transitionally. And what does that mean? It means that we still aren't going to say, when I wake up tomorrow morning, I will tear down all the systems.
I'm going to burn down everything that we have.
No. But we need to make sure that we're taking actions that are transitioning us towards the transformation. Why? Because all living things transform.
Yeah.
And if something's not transforming,
it's dying.
Or it's dead. It's already dead. And so systems that refuse to transform are dead systems. This is what our client agreed with
Yes,
yesterday. They were like,
yes.
yes, yes, and amen, yes. If something won't transform or refuse to transform, it's a dead system because all living things transform. So they might not transform overnight, and some transformation is slower than others, and blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah. But
yeah.
transformation is transformation, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of so for those of you that have been to a program or have been on my tfsx.com, our learning management system and interactive toolkit system, you'll note that our assessment, there's a free leadership assessment to tell you if you're resilient, adaptive, or transformative.
This is exactly it.
Right. And so there's also a free art course, by the way, an asynchronous course that includes at the end of it a decision framework using this idea of adaptive, resilient, transformative. So this is a long sort of drawn out thing to get back to what you were saying. So if Frank's telling us that we need to think transformationally and act transitionally at a high level, conceptually, if that makes sense to you and you're thinking, okay, how do I make this work today, this afternoon? Then, go take the art assessment, open up that course. That decision framework walks you through how you begin with, okay, what's my resilient response to this issue? How do I keep the lights on? Okay, how do I survive this thing that's happening to me? Great. Once I have that answer, then I ask myself, what's my adaptive response? Meaning, how do I ride the wave of change? How can I leverage the disruption? So thinking a little bit more about not just reactionary response to keep the lights on, but something that allows me to adapt to this situation in case it's ongoing or it's going to continue to disrupt. And then transformationally, you would respond to the prompt, if all obstacles were removed and I could direct what is done, what would I do for this issue? But it doesn't end there. You then take your transformative response and you compare it back to your initial resilient response. Remember when we were trying to just keep the lights on and try to survive? If that resilient response does not ultimately set you up for the transformational outcome you've stated, then you need to think of a different way in the short term to keep the lights on and survive the wave of change.
I couldn't be happier that you've mentioned this because this is exactly what the acting domain of the IDGs is pointing us towards. Yeah. So let me just finish the future thinker's dilemma because I never got there. In the article it says, look, Albert Einstein was famous for saying, because there's a couple of things that have been assigned to him.
Him and Lincoln.
And Abraham Lincoln. Either Abraham Lincoln or Albert Einstein said this, or Homer Simpson. I'm just kidding, guys. But this one I do believe he said, although it's been said a million different ways. Much like the quote, the future's already here,
it's just not even distributed.
We joke about that one all the time. The future's around us, but it's not handed out correctly to those who have engaged with it. But he said something similar to, this is very important, you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created the problem. Another way that it's often been stated is you can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created the problem.
Or from within the problem.
Or within the problem. I love to just shorten it that way. You can't solve a problem from within the problem. And so that means that we have to have courage and creativity and optimism and perseverance, because in each one of these descriptions, I'm looking over here because I'm looking at the definitions on the Inner Development Goals site. All four of these mention that enacting and enabling change is a challenge mechanism. And that's what it says in the Futures Thinker's Dilemma. Futures thinking, ultimately, when you're engaged in it, if you're really engaged in futures thinking, you will not be able to avoid challenge. If you're doing foresight and it's not challenging dominant narratives and present systems, I question whether you're really doing foresight.
You're doing executive entertainment.
You're doing executive entertainment.
Yep.
Because if you're just telling people what they want to hear, or you're telling them just enough to where they're still comfortable, then we're not. Because transformation is not comfortable.
Yeah. But that
doesn't mean that I want to lose anybody. I'm not trying to meet people where they are.
But here's the thing.
You have to do that too.
Here's the thing. This is why every foresight effort, engagement, however you want to define it, should be capacity building.
That's right.
Why do we say that? Why do we say that? This is why. Because if you are not building the capacity within people to accept challenge and transformation, then you will back away from doing those things. Yep. And so it's not about like, we talk about meeting people where they are. Don't mistake that for saying that we're just, giving them what they want to hear. We are, while we're challenging the status quo, we're also helping them develop the capacity.
That's it.
To hear that, to accept that, to not be fearful of that. And so that's what we mean by building capacity. It shows up as like we teach them how to do a futures wheel, or we teach them about assumption and bias. But at its core, what it is having them get a level of comfort so that they aren't bristling or rejecting. And it takes time to do that.
It does. And it takes good, holding hands and that's why love, care, empathy, reconciliation are the heart of foresight, because you really got to saddle up to people, and you got to be, and they're going to fight back, and you can't be,
adversarial
about it. You got to be like, okay.
Or like know it all. You know what this is? I'm sure our listeners, viewers have heard of this. The idea of gentle parenting.
Yes.
This is gentle foresighting.
I'm
coining the phrase.
There you go.
I'm emotionally intelligent foresighting.
Emotionally intelligent. Have you already called the lawyer?
No. I'm going to get him on the line immediately. We're not sending any more cease and desist this week. We're going to call it.
You don't want to do that either.
Okay.
Things are what they are.
Courage, creativity.
Yeah, so the future thinker's dilemma, challenge, and encourage. It says the ability to stand up for values, make decisions, take decisive action, and if need be, challenge and disrupt existing structures and views. This is, I didn't make this up. The IDG people, the MIT and Harvard and the UN are all involved in this. They said that. Honestly,
and you all can use this too. That's what's brilliant and why we wanted to bring light to what a lot of people don't know about these IDG and this IDG initiative and these 23 traits. I mean, if you are a learning and development professional, if you are working in a corporate, organizational, or institutional construct, context, then knowing that you have this blueprint that has been developed by very, very respected thought leaders across Harvard and just very these institutions, universities,
and social entities that are
they have said these are the 23 traits our leaders need to have to be successful. These are the 23 traits our students, our children, our citizens need to have.
That's right.
And so if I were still working within an organization and I were trying to build the business case for establishing a foresight practice, I would bring these 23 traits in and I would say, look, you're always wondering who is our future hire, or how do we make sure that our talent is going to be successful in the future? How do we know who to hire? If people showcase these 23 traits, if your culture within your organization exemplifies these 23 traits,
that's right,
you're going to be successful in the future.
I love the hire piece, because we've had many people come to us and say, and this is one of the things we try to build into certification as well, right? Is it really helping people to become hireable as foresight professionals in organizations? And so we've had many discussions. We're having that with the Global Foresight Advisory Council right now, and beginning next year they're going to start working on this a little bit more in depth. What makes a good hireable foresight professional? And you nailed it. It's like if you could go through the 23 traits of the IDGs and say, this person that's applying shows courage, creativity. I'm not going through the other 23 that have already come before. Optimism, perseverance. These are great traits that you want to hire for. And again, going back to my point, this in the Future Thinker's Dilemma as well, challenging and disrupting existing. I love this, Cecilia. Helpful ideas, she said. Just had a client push back on some scenarios saying they were not plausible, but it's been tough to figure out what is really not plausible versus what's just making them uncomfortable. Almost 100% of the time when somebody has said to us over the last 25 years, oh, I don't really think this is plausible, it turns out what they mean is, this is just making me uncomfortable. And so, Cecilia, I know that you do a great job of this already. How do we facilitate people through saying, saying to them, not directly saying, but saying to them in some way, or helping them along the way, do you mean that this is making you uncomfortable? Because I know it's possible.
I'm pretty sure we did a podcast on this as well. Because it could have been the one where we got fired, or I think it was called Say Goodbye to Frank and Yvette, or Robots Really. I don't know. There's been quite a few, and one of the podcast collections we just went through. We went when we did the podcast collection before this one. I think we sort of went through our archives of client experiences and really showcased the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we know those learnings can help, and we're all finding ourselves in those situations. And look, it's not about blind courage either, and it's not about, as we were saying earlier, just because we know that that's not going to be successful. We want these folks to take these ideas and make them their own, and internalize them, and then create action as a result of them. Like, it doesn't do us any favors if we're just pissing people off left and right, and they're like, oh, these are crazy futurists. So I think that's all part of it. But let's talk about these last two, and then let's make our final announcement here.
We will.
Optimism.
Quick comment.
Yes.
Going back to that art assessment again.
Yes.
That Angela put in the chat up here, where you can go. It's just a couple back. You can take the art assessment here.
Yeah.
And Cecilia, I think this is a great way to help a client through this, because if they think what they're seeing is transformational, then you can go through this exercise of the art assessment. Feel free to use it. And you can go back and say, well, what's the resilient response to this, and what's the adaptive response? And then you're walking them through the transition towards transformation.
Yeah.
And so now they get a chance to go like, well, I didn't think it was possible, but if you're saying that's something that we're seeing, now let me give you what my resilient response would be to that adaptive. And now you start transitioning towards those provocations.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, by the way, Frank did an incredible job on a very, very, very robust scenarios course. It's an asynchronous course. So if you're looking to dive deeper into scenario methodology, he talks about some of our own proprietary methods that we usually only do in our live courses, but they're covered in this asynchronous self-paced course that's available on mytfsx.com, the scenario course.
World building.
Yeah. Okay, so optimism. Anyone that's been around us for a while knows that, we are opportunity-laden thinkers. Hence the Wicked Opportunities podcast, But I think that...
Wicked, by the way, for those who are new, is not talking about bad or evil. It's talking about complex. When things are wicked, they're complex. As a matter of fact, there's this idea of wicked problems. So we're saying flip that on its head, and complexity is something we can embrace for opportunity, right?
Yeah, I think this optimism trait could get a little pushback, because even when we are in our programs and when we're doing our engagements, we love to use the where do you stand activity to find out where people stand in terms of their feelings of agency and optimism about the future. And one of the things we say during the debrief of that tool, which, by the way, is a tool that's available as part of the toolkit, and I think we have it as a template, as a separate download as well in our shop, if you're interested in the Where Do You Stand tool and a mural template to go along with it and facilitator notes. But what do you say to people that say, wait a minute, foresight's a team sport. We can't just have, blind optimism in everything that we do, or else we will ignore and we'll miss the threats.
That's right. And, this reminds me of, there was a recent talk between two of my favorite philosophical thinkers today, Nora Bateson, who I like to claim as a friend, or not a close friend, but a friend. And then somebody,
you've talked to her
and then
live.
Somebody that's just out there that I don't know as well, but love to listen to, is Daniel Schmachtenberger. And they can be quite different, but now they've made friends with one another, and they're having these talks where they sit on stage and there's a lot of people around, and they just talk, and it's sort of like a jazz club kind of feel. But these are two really cool people, and so everybody's tuning in. They had a talk recently. They have another one coming up, and they talk about the poly crisis or the mega crisis or multi crisis that we're in. And they say the same thing. It's like, it's not about blind optimism. Things will just turn out better, but it's about hope.
Yeah, that's the key.
And that's the key, right? Rebecca Solnit years ago wrote a book, Hope in the Dark. I would suggest you read that if you haven't ever read it before. Jane Goodall wrote a book about hope, hope being such a force for humanity.
Yeah.
And hope really is about believing that we can see better futures, and that's at the heart of foresight and futures thinking, right? Is to build those better futures. I can't remember his first name, but the designer Cameron Tonkin-Wise.
You're on fire.
It's in the article Future Thinkers Dilemma. I have a quote from him too, where he said, really, if you're in futures thinking and foresight today, we no longer have space to say, we're just telling you how things could be. We have to be more pointed about building hopeful futures. We have to get in the fray.
Yeah.
Because there's just no more time anymore for saying, like, we're just talking about how different futures could be. There's just not space for that.
Yeah.
And so this optimism is really talking about the confidence to challenge, for hope, for positive attitudes, for possibilities, for meaningful change.
Love it.
Yeah. And then last but not least,
Perseverance. And I think perseverance, again, we all get tired. I think when you're working against existing systems that are where they are because they're very, very powerful. I love how they frame this ability to sustain engagement and remain determined and patient, even when efforts take a long time to bear fruit. I would say yes. And I would say be careful with the way that this is framed, just because I think there is a perception that when we're talking about foresight and futures thinking, that we're talking about things that are going to happen in 10, 15 years from now. And that's not what foresight's about, as we all know. It's about, acting today. And while I recognize that it does take time to build this capacity and to overthrow systems, the fact is that we can create meaningful change today.
That's right.
Right now.
Yes.
Within ourselves, within our stakeholder group, within our area of control. So, but I do agree that you have to be in it for the long haul. I think that self-care is a huge part. When you're a futurist and you're constantly reading everything that's happening, that can be really hard on your soul. And I think having outlets like, my TFSX or IFTF's, optimism community, or, whatever you find to be your safe space. There are many, many futurists and foresight professionals now, and there's more every day. And I think in that sense, that type of community, just speaking in general terms, is so helpful.
So helpful. Our good friend Pablo Reyes is starting a Latam Futures community.
Yes.
He yesterday was invited to be on the governmental board of foresight and strategy for the government of Chile. So congratulations, Pablo.
We love Chile.
And he just received a scholarship to show up in Dubai.
That's so amazing.
And I love that they're giving out scholarships to people in places where it's harder to afford to travel to places.
Absolutely.
So Pablo's going to be there. But yeah, I couldn't agree more about the perseverance part. And that's why when you hear the word transformation is showy and you see it in lights, transformation. But really the important part of that think transformationally, act transitionally is the act transitionally part.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would encourage you. And it's like, if we have these North Stars, then what are the actions we take today to be in transition towards those hopeful, meaningful, challenging, biological, psychological, and sacred futures that we need to build as an internal experience in each and every one of us. I hope you've enjoyed our time here together today. You had a little secret announcement?
Just really quick, because we always want to end a couple minutes early because it's such a delay that I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I'm not going to give away too much because we have to, everything has to have in due time. But I'm going to say that next year, we're not only hopefully going to have transformations as an in-person experience, that retreat that we talked about at the top of the hour. But we're excited to bring back in-person experiences for Foundations. So Foundations is our flagship program that started it all in terms of our learning experiences. It's a 3-day program. We're going to continue to host that across 6 modules online because we want to be able to, have it be accessible for people that cannot travel or where that, economics are more challenging. And we do love the online live experience of that program, but we miss being in person. We know you all do as well. So I think as early as spring of 2024, potentially, we will be hosting Foundations in person and quite possibly in a location outside of the U.S. Oh, I said it.
All you can say.
I said it.
That's
I
all
said
you
it.
can say.
I said it.
I wish you could say more, but you can't say more.
Can't say any more.
It's just not possible.
Can't say any more than that.
And potentially with a great partner.
Oh, okay. Good. Let's not say any more.
No, you can't say any more.
Muy bonito. Va a ser una programa muy deliciosa, I should have practiced a little bit more, pero, cafecito.
Now, see, now you're giving more.
Panecito.
Yeah.
Everything with ito, as Frank likes to say.
Delicious guavaito.
All right. Yeah, friends, October 31st, save the date. It's our next live stream. We will be in costume. We will be talking about the future being alive. And we can't wait to see you.
Yes, I have to make sure that I get my Halloween costume together. It's such important. Cecilia, thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining.
Yeah.
And we will see you all on October 31st. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.